watching the 2005 Emmy Award winner for Best Newscast, the WB11 News at 10.
High wind gusts are already being blamed for at least one very nasty accident. A tree branch came crashing down onto a truck on Long Island, impaling the driver through the abdomen. Tonight, he's fighting for his life.
It's now more on the driver nearly killed in a freak weather-related accident today. It happened when a powerful gust of wind sent a huge tree limb crashing into a moving car. Long Island reporter Heather Holmes has more from Old Westbury.
There was a screeching noise and a crash was heard.
And the next thing Dr. Paul Coker heard was a man pleading for help. 34-year-old Christopher McMahon, an employee with the town of North Hempstead's Parks and Recreation Department, was driving down IU Willits Road in Old Westbury when all of a sudden a huge tree limb came crashing through his truck's windshield.
I didn't examine him, but I saw that there was blood coming through his abdomen.
Dr. Coker called 911 as soon as he saw the gruesome scene. Within minutes, police and emergency crews arrived, and McMahon was rushed to Winthrop University Hospital.
You work for somebody and you become part of a family. That's just, the way it is.
Stunned co-workers also rushed to the scene and to the emergency room, where doctors immediately operated. Police believe it was a combination of high winds and the age of the old oak that caused the freak accident.
A gust of wind had come up and took the limb right off the tree, snapped it down, landed in the road, and talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time. He just happened to be coming right at that precise moment.
When the tree pierced McMahon's stomach, he lost control of the truck and swerved off the road, slamming right into a row of pine trees.
Chris, young, nice, lovable, good worker.
McMahon had only been with the Parks Department for 2 years, but had already impressed his fellow employees with his work ethic. In fact, he was headed to work at a park in Newcastle when the unimaginable happened.
Today, the Insider Exclusive goes behind the headlines in Courage, Christopher McMahon's story, to examine how Robert Sullivan, member at Sullivan, Papain, Block, McGrath, and Cannavo, successfully won a $3.5 million settlement for his amazingly courageous client, Christopher McMahon. Christopher's story is an extraordinary one of personal courage and perseverance, and how when faced with an unimaginable life-changing injury, he tapped into an inner strength and found resilience he didn't even know he had. In the fall of 2005, Christopher was studying for his master's at the New York Institute for Technology. His life was picture perfect. He was pursuing his dream of becoming a school counselor and was engaged to a wonderful woman. Little did he know that on the morning of November 16, 2005, while at work, his life would become a real-life horror movie, changing him forever. Driving his employer's Ford Ranger truck in the village of Old Westbury, New York during a windstorm, a huge rotted tree limb came crashing down right through his windshield, impaling him and piercing him right through his abdomen.
As I was driving, I heard a large crack, and a few seconds later, I heard a large crash. It was a tree limb coming through the windshield, and it hit me in the abdomen and my hands. It replaced the steering column where my hands were. I lost control of the truck and went a distance, and then I hit another tree, and that tree came down on the cab and threw me across the bench seat. I was stunned and screaming when the first limb came through. I was in terrible pain. As I lay there, I could feel my body going cold. There was blood gushing out of my abdomen onto the seat and onto the floor of the cab. As I saw, I looked at my right hand, my fingers were hanging off, bleeding, and I had to look away because I felt like I was going to pass out. The tree limb speared me in the abdomen straight through the windshield. I had 2 logs on my hips, across my hips. One was outside the top of the cab, pushing down on the other through the windshield, holding me in there. I never lost consciousness while I was at the site, even though I was in excruciating pain.
Today, for the first time ever on national television, Christopher McMahon will tell his amazing story of his brush with death, where it was touch and go because of all of his injuries and all the infections from the branch slivers of rotted, decayed wood. He sustained injuries to his abdomen, including bladder rupture, vein laceration, fracture of the pelvis, traumatic amputation of his fingertip, shock and renal failure, and much more. He underwent 14 surgeries, including a replacement and a reconstruction of his right hip. And through it all, Christopher had the perseverance, the fortitude, and the endurance of Job. Despite this tragic accident and dealing with all sorts of other medical complications, Christopher never gave up the will to survive and get better. In fact, he and his fiancée kept their original wedding date and were married 9 months later on July 22, 2006. Not even a shattered hip could stop him from marrying his true love. Moreover, in 2009, he was finally able to complete his master's degree in school counseling from the New York Institute of Technology. Christopher's story is a true testament that nothing is impossible. It takes a lot of strength and energy to put negatives aside and stay focused on what little positives we may find. It's a struggle, but knowing what Christopher knows now, he's glad he has always been willing to put in the effort that it took to overcome so many adversities. As Christopher will tell you, he has experienced much pain, love, loss, fear, success, and failure, from which he's learned a great deal, all of which has made him who he is today. But there's also something else he's experienced along his many challenges in life, and it often goes unnoticed in the wake of tragedy: generosity. He's had many ups and downs in his lifetime, maybe more than average, and through all these ups and downs, he has learned that he has not been alone. All the people he's touched along the way, or who have touched him, have experienced these triumphs and tragedies as well. It's not until we are struck with a catastrophe that we are reminded of generosity's warm hug. And besides the generosity of his family, one very good friend and legal mentor through all of this ordeal has been his lawyer, Bob Sullivan, and his firm, whose sincere generosity and assistance really got justice for Christopher and his family. Bob Sullivan has earned the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best trial lawyers in New York and in the nation. His goal is not only to get justice for his clients, but to make sure that similar accidents like this don't ever happen again. He makes sure juries understand how injuries can truly devastate a person's personal and professional life. Remember, he won't be outworked, and he will not rest until justice is done for his clients. His success in the courtroom speaks for itself. His amazing courtroom skills and headline-grabbing success rate continue to provide his clients with the results they need and the results they deserve. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from New York. It is my great pleasure to introduce Bob Sullivan to the show. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Thank you, Steve.
Tell our audience a little bit about your firm. What type of law does your firm primarily practice?
We represent victims only of medical malpractice cases and all kinds of different accidents, automobile accidents, construction accidents, things of that kind.
Today we're here talking about a really remarkable individual and a really unusual case, Chris McMahon. And would you tell our audience a little bit about your client, Chris?
I love Chris McMahon. As opposed to most clients come to us, we don't know them. Chris McMahon grew up in my town. And, you know, then life went on and he got a nice job and he was doing what he was supposed to be doing, given an errand to run on his job, driving to it when this horrible accident happened and completely changed his entire life. Mm-hmm. And while we were very successful in the lawsuit, we'll never restore Chris McMahon back to the life he had and the person he was. It'll never happen.
Now, in this particular case, there was a lawsuit against the city, right?
Village of Old Westbury.
This is an unusual case in the sense that you were suing the city, the village. And it's a case where the tree fell as a result of some bad weather, okay? Tell us the challenges that you faced in prosecuting a case like this.
All right, the challenge is this. First of all, jurors always think that, well, a tree came over.
Yeah.
Well, it's an act of God.
Yes.
It's understandable. It didn't happen during a hurricane or anything like that, but a tree fell over. So why should the village be responsible? Well, we pay taxes, and there are employees designated in the village, especially a village like this with huge trees, to go on what I'll call tree patrol.
Right.
To look for trees that should come down.
That could be dangerous and cause
Clearly
accidents.
dangerous. Now, the challenge in this case was this. This tree was rotted, and anybody could see that.
Yes.
As soon as it happened, we rushed to court to get an order from a judge saying to the village, don't destroy this tree, so that we could have experts look at it and prove our case.
Right.
2 days later, the village went out and took the entire tree away.
They destroyed
Violated the court order, spoliation, destruction of evidence, and they did it intentionally.
Right. And in simple language, they destroyed the evidence. Didn't
Absolutely.
They? And they did that why?
Just to cover their behinds.
Yeah.
They didn't want to be responsible.
Now, I read, I believe, in the papers that you sent us that they said they inspected these trees on a daily basis.
It was such nonsense. They said that they had an inspector out on a daily basis to inspect these trees. Fortunately, the police, the real heroes here are not us. The police and the medical people who saved his life, because he should be dead. They were the heroes, but photos were taken at the scene. And when those photos were blown up to show that what was left of that tree, it was so obviously rotted, decayed, and destroyed that to say that you had inspected it on a daily basis 2 years earlier, you would have seen that this tree should come down.
Right.
And that's what caused the accident.
And their defense was what? Act of
Oh,
God?
the tree was fine.
The tree was fine.
The tree was fine. We inspect our trees every day, and this tree was fine, and it's just an act of God.
What was the end result of the case?
Well, we had to try the case against the village. They denied it all away. They fought it all away, and we beat them. The jury found the village totally responsible. Obviously, there was no fault on Chris. He was driving down the block minding his business.
Right.
And then we went on to a damages trial because they still kept resisting. And then we had to hammer them on damages. And then finally they settled. Just before summation on damages, they settled.
We fortunately have Chris here today, and we're going to bring him on right now. It's my great privilege to introduce Chris McMahon to the show. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you.
A lot of people are watching this show and they're thinking after they saw, the beginning and the tree that went through the windshield, God, how did you survive? Take us back to that day and kind of recount for us. You're driving down the road, kind of stormy out. What happened next?
As I was going along, I heard a huge crack over my head, and I thought gas, brake, or let go. Just relax. And I relaxed, and thank God I did, because the tree limb came directly through the windshield and through me.
Like a spear, right?
Just like that.
And when it hit you, what did you feel immediately? It went right through the windshield, shattered the whole thing, right?
Absolutely.
What did you feel?
A huge rush, and I think I burst right into a scream. And with that, these couple fingers got damaged, and I lost control of the wheel, pulling it to the left. And I hit a pine tree, and that came down on the cab, leaving me lying sideways. Now,
With the tree in you?
Yes.
How far was the tree in you?
The tree was through me.
Through you?
Yes. It left a 16-inch diameter hole in me, in my abdomen.
It's amazing you were coherent with all the pain that you were in, right? They rushed you to the hospital.
Yes.
What's going through your mind? Are you thinking about, I'm going to die or anything like this?
Immediately, once I saw my stomach and I saw my fingers going back, I thought to myself, am I going to live or am I going to die?
Right.
And when I heard those two gentlemen talking and saying, why call 911? it really impacted my decision. I really want to live and I really want to get out of here.
Yeah. And then how long after that did you wake up?
12 days later, they induced me into a medically induced coma. Yes.
Now, you have been through a lot of surgeries, haven't you?
21.
21 surgeries.
Yes.
In over what period of time?
Since November 16th, 05 to today.
And talk about how are you today?
My world changed very much in the sense that I related everything in my world to the physical. I was very much a laborer, you know, an able-bodied person, and most of the things that I could do were through my physical gifts.
Mm-hmm.
That changed very, very much. Having been given last rites twice, it quickly got me to understand that if I were able to get the spiritual aspect of my life together,
yeah,
the mental and the physical would fall into place.
So you are pretty spiritual right now?
Absolutely.
Okay. So how has your life changed today?
Today,
yeah,
I spend almost as much time as I used to physically doing exercise as I do in meditation, or doing stretches, or a little bit of physical therapy here and there. But I'm much more focused on my mental and my spiritual than I am on my physical.
Having grown up near Bob and his family, you have kind of a bond, don't you?
Absolutely.
What do you think of him as a lawyer and a friend?
As a friend, wonderful human being. Absolutely the first guy you would want to reach out to in any situation, let alone such a dire one. As a lawyer, well, the courtroom, when he gave his closing argument, had more lawyers in it than it did support from me. Rockin'.
Well, you're an inspiration, and I want to thank you for being on this program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Bob, let's talk about what duty does a city or a municipality owe its citizens in making sure there aren't dangerous things out there that might harm them?
They owe a duty, and the reason they owe a duty is because of our taxes. We pay taxes, and there are employees who travel the roads and inspect the highways, things like trees,
sidewalks,
guardrails. There are employees inspecting these things. Now, to say that every tree is inspected on a daily basis, as they did in this case, was nonsense.
Right.
Okay? But periodically, roads are traveled, and there's a specific route, and they have men who do this. And if they're doing their job, and that's one of the big problems, okay? If they're doing their job, then they report unusually dangerous potholes. I'm not talking small stuff, but I mean things that can cause major disasters. They'll see a tree like this, and all they have to do is take out a piece of chalk and exit, and then periodically they go through and take them down.
Right.
So they do owe us a duty because we do pay our taxes for this, and there are employees who are supposed to do it.
And that was the key logic behind winning the case, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you very much for being on this program and sharing this case, and congratulations.
Steve, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at InsiderExclusive.com.